Be video 3, leaving behind pop culture, moving to foreign stuff. We haven't talked about foreign stuff in long. What's that? Frozen. Disney's Frozen. There we go. Sorry. Go into foreign diplomacy. We haven't really talked about foreign affairs in a while. Most of our focus for a good long while is the country and expansion and slavery. But we're now going to turn our attention towards foreign policy from basically post-Civil War until World War I. So we're going to be looking at foreign policy for the United States post-Civil War to World War I. Why do you think all of a sudden foreign policy becomes a lot more important to us by 70s, 80s, and 90s? And why is that important for industry? Right, I could sell just to Americans, but I could do what? Sell to other people, and I make more money, right? So now we're going to be very concerned about selling to more places, so we're going to have much more of a foreign policy develop here. Because for a long time, we just want to be very what? Isolated. Leave us alone. We just want to expand out west and be left alone. But now we're like, hey, you could buy our crap and make us money. So, yeah. So from the 1790s until about mid-1800s, our policy had been Western expansion, protect our interests, and limit foreign influence. That was kind of our overall foreign policy from Washington until basically post-Civil War, was expansion west, keep out outside influence, and worry about ourselves. But with the industrial economy booming from the 60s onward, we now have a much bigger emphasis on foreign affairs because now we want to become involved in selling. So this is where we begin to become a world power. We won't become a dominant world power until like World War II time, but now we're going to become a world player. We kind of like shunned this role for a while. And now by 1900, 1915, we become more of a world player with trade and industrialization. Okay, so first looking at a major land purchase for us in the 1860s under Secretary of State William Seward. So Secretary of State William Seward, this man right here, is going to buy famously what chunk of land? Alaska. Who owned Alaska before us? Russia did, right? Russia never did much with Alaska. Russia had conquered it in the 1700s, mostly used for fur trapping, fishing, those kind of things, but never had like a giant colony of people there. Probably because, why?
So cold.
Right. Cold, bunch of moose. They got all that back in Russia. Who cares, right? Yes.
Did we talk about Seward's Folly?
Did we?
You
Yeah,
didn't mention it because we were.
I think I mentioned it, but it wasn't like a... This is the first official time he's talking about. Okay. I may have mentioned it, but I don't think I actually like went into it. I don't think I did, but maybe I did. So the Russians are looking to sell this territory because they don't really need it as much anymore. They need money. They don't want to sell to their immediate neighbor, which is who? Who owns Canada right now? The British, right? So they don't want to sell to Britain. So they basically reach out to us and say, hey, do you want to buy Alaska? And we say, yes. So William Seward, Secretary of State, goes and makes a deal and works out a buying plan. We buy Alaska for only $7.2 million. So we buy Alaska for only $7.2 million. It's basically even cheaper than Louisiana Purchase. It was like 2 cents an acre. And everybody made fun of Seward. They call it Seward's Folly. They call it Seward's Icebox. They all wrote these articles about how bad it was, and it was a terrible decision. It was all full of ice and moose and nothing else. What a waste of money, right?
No.
So then years later, in the 1890s, what do they find there? Gold in the Yukon, right? And so there's a major gold rush there. And then later they find what?
Oil.
Delicious oil, right? So now Alaska has more than paid for itself, right? And now it's become a major part of the United States. All that sweet oil that's under the ground there. Delicious. Yeah. So it would take years for it to see its value, but it will be an expansion of America. But here you see us buying territory that will not be what with us? Connected, right? So it's not. So it's one of the first purchases we make that are not attached to us, right? That happens here in the 1860s. All right. Then you get to the age of imperialism. And you want to be aware what imperialism is. Imperialism is going to be the dominant term or name for our foreign policy from about the 80s through 19 teens. So from the 1880s to 19 teens, this is what dominates our foreign policy, what's called imperialism. Root word here is what? Which is what? What does imperial look like? Empire, right? So it's where America's what? Building an empire, right? So here's your definition of imperialism. Imperialism is where you essentially have a stronger country dominate a weaker country. So where you have a stronger country dominate a weaker country economically, politically, or militarily. So where you have a stronger country dominate a weaker country economically, politically, or militarily. So it's a stronger country dominating a weaker one economically, politically, militarily. It does not mean you have to own them. So as we're going to find out, we're not going to go out and try to control or own all these territories. So we're not annexing, yes. Politically or militarily. So it does not mean you have to actually own the place. You can just go into an area and just, influence them, kind of tell them what to do, and not ever actually control them directly. So anyway, that's what we're going to be moving in towards right now. Why does this take place? Number one, we want more markets, right? More places we have influence over, the more markets we can sell to. Two, we don't just want their markets, we also want to be able to go there and get their what from there? Resources. We want their resources, which then can be brought back to America, manufactured, and then, sold again. So that's two of the big reasons why we want this to happen. We want more markets to sell to, but we also want raw materials from these areas as well. Many conservatives at the time thought expansion would bring about, would end a lot of the unhappiness and problems after the Civil War. So a lot of people thought if we focus on expansion, all those post-Civil War problems, all the political issues, the labor problems, the farmer problems, all that will become less important because as Americans, we can all unite behind what idea? Expanding our country, making it stronger. Have a good weekend. See you later.